Just by a show of hands, how many of you attended this history workshop last year? Okay, so four or five, okay. Some of it is going to be a little repetitive from last year, and those who attended last night, some of it is going to be a little repetitive from last night. But there is some new content here, and it's important content, and I want to history organizations and history programming have been having a really hard time in attracting the new audiences, the new millennial and younger audiences, more so than cultural programming. And a lot of people around the country have been doing a lot of thinking about why that is, and I think we're zeroing in on a fundamental reason why history organizations are having a difficult time attracting audiences, and we're going to cover that tonight. It is a little paradigm shifting for some organizations, but I think it's exactly correct. So we're going to tackle that tonight and talk about how your organizations can respond to that a little bit. And of course, any response you do can be grant funded. So let's get right into it. If I can, I have to do this. All right, so this is a chart showing history funding in Cumberland County since 2007. There was a dip in 2010-11. The New Jersey Historical Commission, who we receive our funds from, then restructured their grants program statewide. And you can see since about 2014, our funding levels have been going up consistently every year. Last year, well, this year, we gave out $21,000 in history funding. We're projected in 2018, pending board approval, to give out at least $25,000 in history funding for organizations in Cumberland County. That is a significant increase from 2011, which was $7,000. So we have nearly quadrupled that in not so many years. So the application is pretty straightforward. There are a few things to know that are super important. One is the deadline, October 13th. That's Friday the 13th in October, so you can't forget it. If you get to Friday the 13th and you haven't submitted an application, call me right away, and you'll make a nightmare out of Friday the 13th, but we'll work it out. Everything related to the application and the process is available in Spanish through our Commissioner, Maria Cerda Moreno. If you have someone that is English as a second language and they're more comfortable dealing in Spanish, they can contact Maria at that phone number, and we can work on processing the application that way. And I will say, I believe it's elsewhere in the presentation, but I will point out that having a service like that in this county is very important. We have a large Latino population, a large population where English is a second language, and if we're trying to attract as many people as we can, we don't want to discount that group of residents and folks, and so it's important to try to incorporate in bilingual opportunities whenever possible. You only need to submit one copy of everything. What we do is, when we get it, we scan everything in, make it a PDF, put it on flash drives for our grants review panelists. We were the trendsetter in Cumberland with this. I understand Gloucester implemented this year because it makes the world a lot better, both for you, for the environment, and for our grant review panelists. I can remember being on a panel 4 years ago, and you got everything in paper, and you had to, it was a box that came to my house. It had to be shipped, and then I had to lug it to the grants review panel meeting, and then we had big trash bags, and when we were done, everybody threw everything away. It It was just ridiculous. So this is a much easier system. And then when you submit the application, you're submitting it to me at 164 West Broad. You can mail it, drop it off. You can email it, but if you email it, just call me to confirm that I received it, because sometimes it can go into spam, or if the file's too large and it never makes it to me. So it's always good to confirm that I did receive it. Plus it helps remind me that it's there. So who can apply? Any nonprofit or government agency. What can be funded? Pretty much any publicly accessible program in Cumberland County in calendar year 2018. Now that's something else that's changed with Historical Commission funding. In the past, they worked on a fiscal year, so it was a little funky, but you would go from July to June, and that's why your final reports were typically due in July, August of each year. Now they're not due until January. I know I've sent out final reports for this year already. If you didn't see them or you're confused, they're not due until January, mid-January. But if you're done your programming, you can go ahead and complete the final report and submit it and get your payment voucher early, your final payment. What cannot be funded? Capital expenses, so capital improvements, equipment with a 3-year shelf life or longer, so that would be computers, copiers, display cases would probably fall into that category. If you think of something that is maybe a gray area and you're not sure, give me a call and we can figure out what's going to be appropriate. We would probably be lenient on gray area topics, so give me a call if you're not sure. Scholarships, food and alcohol, deficit reduction. Our applicants currently don't do any of that, so it's really not an issue, but for new folks, we just want to make sure you understand. Food and alcohol is great. I recommend it for everything. As you can see, we have a great spread here tonight. This picture looks delicious. You can have it, but that would be part of your match. You can't use grant funds to provide that. Any questions on this? This is all pretty simple stuff.
Can any of those other things be part of your match besides food?
Yes. So if you purchase equipment, if you bought a computer and it's related to the program you're seeking funding for, then yes. It's hard, I can't think of anything right off the bat with history, but if it were an art program and they bought cameras for some sort of program, that would be a match. That would be a legitimate match. Okay. And the match requirements are 1-for-1, except if you're a college, which is a 1-to-2 match. So you can, basically the grant can't exceed 50% of the project, all right? And it's pretty easy to calculate. So if we have an organization, Boys and Girls Club, they want to do a new mural, it's going to cost $18,000. This is actually the mural the Boys and Girls Club did. It was funded through our grant. It's awesome. How much could they apply to us for? $9,000. That's right. All right. Any questions on that? All right. Acknowledgements. So in your contract and in the guidelines that you received tonight, there's specific language that has to be included whenever you do a flyer or a press release. If you're doing a performance announced before the performance begins, that gives acknowledgement to our funders. For history, it's the bottom one, and you need to include the Cultural and Heritage Commission logo and the New Jersey Historical Commission logo. If you don't have those, you can Google them, they come up. If you need them, I can email them to you. It's important because you might not even realize that you have a freeholder in your audience or someone from the state legislature in your office or at your event, and they might not know that they're funding your program, and then they get their program book and here's an acknowledgement thanking them. That's what we want. That is great. All right. The Cultural and Heritage Commission, yes, that is a new logo. I think it's a year, really a year and a half, something like that. And we're working on banners. I got the contract out for the banners, so we'll have new banners available with the new logo for everyone to use. Oh, wait, I want to show you one great example of how you can acknowledge grant funding. One thing you'll see tonight is that videography is a key component to marketing, particularly given social media. And if you are not doing little 3-minute video chats and little snippets, and you really need to start. So, and there's about 15,000 teenagers with smartphones in Cumberland County that can give you a hand on doing that.
Interconnectedness, creativity, things like that. The space is an industrial area and neighborhood, so this is a way that they could beautify the space and feel really good about where they are. It was fun for us and it's fun for them, and it's a really good way for everyone to be involved and feel like they really had a hand in the mural and feel connected to the artwork that's going to be on their building now.
A grant from the Cultural and Heritage Commission to Cumberland County, New Jersey Council on the Arts, and we were able to get support for a colorful mural that we're going to wrap our new building in. I am familiar with the Philadelphia Mural Arts Program. We found chroma dolls through them, and Allie and Kala are just terrific. You know, we thought their artwork was wonderful, so that's how we chose them.
I see the mural as a beautiful representation of when everyone is working together. There's a lot of different pieces of the puzzle, but when you put it all together, there's a beautiful picture of collaboration, you know, advocacy, just being all on the same page.
We want them to be successful in life. This could be, I think, like a catalyst for them to do so.
This is their home. This is their place to kind of calm, relax, and be themselves and vent or whatever is going on. You know, this is a safe spot for them. The building and just working with their kids, it definitely is just, it's essentially restorative, either in their home life, school life, with adults that, you know, are part of their lives. They know that they have people that they can come to and talk to and be with, so. Good experience.
So Andrew Gormley is a videographer from Philadelphia that was secured by the Chroma Dolls. That marketing piece, that video piece, was included in the grant application. Marketing is an eligible expense for our grant funds. So if you're doing a grant application, and it's going to run you $600 to do a little video like that, put that in the grant application. All right. This is the checklist. What we have done is we have trimmed down the application to the absolute essential components the grants review panel is going to need to make an accurate assessment of your proposal. Every year we try to make it easier and smaller. I think we cut out another page or two this year. But this, we've kind of whittled it down to what we really need now. And that is the application checklist, which is this, just checked off, signed at the bottom. Signature page, what we'll get to, the narrative, activities chart, which is just a list of your activities that you're hoping to have happen in 2018. Your finance charts, your community chart, which is just demographics of the county. You're just going to indicate, you know, how your board members and volunteers and audience kind of plays out, and those are just estimates on audiences. Demographics for audiences is always a difficult thing. Resumes of key staff, list of board members. If you're a first-time applicant, we need to see your bylaws. If you are have applied before, don't worry about your bylaws, we have them in the file. Some type of audit or financial review. This can be IRS Form 990, it can be a full-fledged audit, or it could be just your internal summary accounting of the year. It's just, we just need to see that your budget is stable. An ADA plan, a copy of your long-range plan only if you're applying for GOS funding, and if you have not changed your long-range plan since the last time you submitted it, you don't need to submit it. If there have been amendments, give us the new one. And then any publicity or flyers or promotions that you did in the past 12 months. If you are a current grantee, one of the reasons we ask for that is we want to see that the acknowledgements are in there to ensure that you're meeting that requirement. But that's basically it. Get those together, one copy of everything, and submit it to me, and we're done. All right, any questions on the checklist? Okay. This is the signature page, also an easy page. All you're going to do is put contact information in there. The contact information should be the individual that is completing the application, so that if I get it and it's missing something or I'm not sure what something means, I can reach out to that person and they know. Don't put, like, if you're filling out the application and you put the contact information as your board chair, and I call the board chair and they're like, what application to who? You know, so don't do that. Give us, you know, give me the person that's going to know the answers. A elevator pitch on what you want to do, just a couple of sentences, and then you're going to identify how much you're asking for and from what program. So special project will be individual events. All right, if you're going to do Bay Day or the race for the lighthouse or anything like that, that's a special event. So you're going to ask for special programming. General programming support is if you have multiple events throughout the year and they're different. Let's say you're going to have an Irish jig and a tea and some type of educational workshop, and all right, that would be programming, and you would put that all under general programming support. General operating support is if your primary mission is history, and you need assistance with operations of your organization, electric, insurance, just the basic expenses, you can submit a GOS application. Keep in mind, if you have not received GOS from us and you apply for GOS, there is a higher standard there in the review process. So, you know, just be aware of that. You want to make that application because we need to see that the organization is stable and solid before we're going to invest in operating support. Any questions on that? Okay, there's no cap on the request. Be realistic. All right, so I want to spend a minute and talk about accessibility. And this is going to lead into what the professionals are determining is one of the issues related to history organizations that's causing an issue. Why does your organization exist? Why do you have a historic house museum or a lighthouse or an oyster shed that's been rehabbed and interpreted? Why do they exist? Does anyone want to? Jamie, you can't answer because...
No, I wasn't going to, because I did last
You did last night, so you can't cheat. Does anyone want to venture a guess?
We need to have a positive impact on citizens.
That's absolutely right. So you're doing it to impact your community, right? To educate your community, to preserve the history of the community, and for your community to utilize and appreciate that history. You're not doing it for the building itself. You're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for other people, your audience, fundamentally. All right? So, if your audience is the key, then accessibility needs to be a critical component of that. I'm just going to play a little video here from the Museum of Modern Art.
I think it's essential that the Museum of Modern Art be a leader in responding to communities with disabilities for a very simple reason. We believe in the power of art, we believe in the significance of the artists that we represent, and we believe in the importance of the audience that visits our museum. And when you put all of that together, you want the greatest possible number of people to enjoy the power of the art that's on display here, and that means addressing the needs of everybody who comes to the museum.
When somebody says, oh yeah, if you go up to the second floor and look at such and such, we have sculptures that you can touch if you use these gloves. That's really welcoming.
Do you know how you see something in a book and how good it is to see? Imagine how it is to see it in a museum. Wow! You can actually see the brushstrokes and everything. It's so pretty.
Over the years, and especially in the last couple of decades, we've really tried to think of the institution as all-embracing.
I'm a hard of hearing. Does the audio guide have a transcript?
It does. Let me show you how it works.
I'm very happy in museum environments. I love to see the things that people can do, the old paintings, the new work.
Between making it a priority within the institution, incorporating some of the latest technology, these are just the beginnings of what we would like to see at the museum.
Hi, how are you? Do you have a large brochure? Oh, thank you very much.
I tend to remember what was described to me in a painting, but I'll never forget how a Monet was described to me or a Kandinsky was described to me. It's just, I remember art.
My grandfather taught me a whole lot of artists. Gosh, Monet, Mona Lisa, I love museums.
People come for a variety of reasons. Part of it could be very much community, meeting like-minded people.
I think that it's really important for us to be part of the community and to be part of the cultural life. And that really makes the art important to me.
This was the first place I came to for a touchstone.
I think the most important thing about the Museum of Modern Art is the way in which it can bring art and people together. And so the visitor experience is the essential aspect of what we think about when we think about how people will enjoy this museum. And of course, accessibility is essential to the visitor experience. It's at the heart of what we do here at the museum.
The world is going to be an equal place, so why not make it equal for us too, so that we can stop dreaming and live.
Okay, so visitor audience experience is the essential aspect of your work, and if that is in fact the case, then accessibility needs to be a core component of that. All right, rather than get into all the nitty-gritty on what that entails, what I would recommend is you look for VSA International. They have a Facebook page, they have a Twitter account. They are the organization that specializes in accessibility and cultural programming. And they have a lot of great examples of how you can start implementing that critically into your organization. It should be a fundamental part of your mission. All right. So a couple of things when we think about this. Practice radical hospitality. All right. All of these organizations, locations, sites are practicing economic development. All right. And so if you think about it that way, then your audience is really your client. And so just think of it as if you had a hotel. You would want to be as hospitable as possible to all your clients. Make sure everyone's experience was positive and they left happy. That's what you want to work on accomplishing for your organization. So think about it as radical hospitality. That's what we're trying to do here. Plan ahead. Be proactive, not reactive. That's why we recommend you have a plan in place that tries to think about every contingency that could happen. Someone comes to your site in a wheelchair and they can't have access, and maybe the volunteer that's on that day or the docent really hasn't done sensitivity training to that and doesn't know how to respond to their needs, and that person is dissatisfied and files a complaint or wants to file a complaint with your board. Having a system in place to address that, to accept that complaint, and have a system to respond to it in a timely manner, that's where you can plan ahead rather than be reactive. And then finally, aim for possible, not perfect. No organization, including the Commission, is perfect on this front. You're always trying to just improve each incremental way you can. I like the term, the most successful, inclusive organizations are willing to try new things, reflect on what worked, more importantly, what didn't, stay connected to the disability community, and revise your plan. All right, so try to include persons with disabilities in your board and in your administrative processes. And don't worry if something doesn't work. As long as you have a critical assessment tool in place to identify what doesn't work and then figure out why it doesn't work and then work on a plan to improve it. That's what we're looking for. What happens when we get applications is we have a separate committee that looks at your accessibility components to your application. They meet before the grants review panel, and we discuss and review how your organization is responding to the needs of the disabled community and to all communities within the county. Those comments are then provided to the grants review panel, and that goes into their scoring process. All right, so it's critically important to the Commission. That's why we have a separate committee just on that topic. All right. These are just some of the things that should be in an ADA plan. Again, if you go to VSA or you do a search for ADA plans online, you'll see lots of different great examples. Our ADA plans over the years for the Commission are all on our website, and you can just pull those right off. They're PDFs, and use those as templates. One of the things we do when you receive your contract is we have an ADA compliance writer as part of the contract. We ask you as an organization to fill this out and sign it and get it back to us. One of the things we recommend is if you're going to use a venue that's not your own, that you create an ADA compliance writer for the facilities that you're going to be renting. It just gives you a piece of paper in your files that if something does come up, you can reflect back on it and see how they responded to it. And it also helps get the word to the venue that these components are important to you as an organization, and so they need to be responsive in some way to them. All right, it's a free, easy policy issue that you could implement tomorrow that would go a long way. And a lot of these, when we talk about history organizations, a lot of these improvements are policy. They are not going to cost you anything. We'll get into that. 3 to 5 pages for the narrative. This is the who, what, when, where, how. Who's involved? Who are you going to try to reach? What are you going to do? When's it going to happen? All right, be succinct as possible. It can be 5 pages, but if it's 3, it's better. All right, because we have the panel has usually over 30 applications to review, and they have a lot of work. And we try to get it all done in one night, and so it's important that you be as succinct as possible. I'm a fiction writer in the grant proposal genre. You're not writing fiction. We understand you want to be very positive about your event, which is fine, but we want you to be realistic as well. So, you know, if you say, oh, we're going to have an event, it's the first time we're having it, we're going to have 15,000 people attend, that's going to raise a red flag for the grants review panel. So keep in mind, these folks that are on the grants review panel are savvy. They've seen all of this. They've done it for a couple of years, and they know what they're looking for. And they're going to catch stuff like that and say, you know, the concern in that front is not that you think you can get 15,000. It's that you're maybe not being realistic on how you're going to attract an audience. If you say you're going to get 15 and you really don't have a publicity plan or some method to actually attract that 15,000, that's where the problem lies. Speaking of which, the publicity plan, we don't ask for a publicity plan anymore. Instead, what we do in the guidelines is we make recommendations. So a couple recommendations: bilingual marketing to the Latino community in Cumberland County. Social media. If you are not doing social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, then you should start tomorrow. Primarily, marketing is moving to social media almost exclusively. Paid marketing is to brand your organization. Attracting audiences is done through word of mouth. You get one person to attend. It's an interesting program. They're fascinated by it. They love it. They put it on Facebook and tell their friends, and next thing you know, that's your marketing right there. That's what's attracting younger audiences. And then, just if you can in the narrative, talk about how you are attracting and tracking your audience. Do you know who your audience is? Are they local? Are they from out of county? Are they younger? Do they trend older? Are they families? Are they single? You know, what brought them to your organization? And then some analysis of who's not coming to your programming, and some discussion, a couple sentences on why you think that might be, and what you could do potentially in marketing to attract that underserved audience. Right? And there's no correct answer here. Audience demographic collection is a difficult thing to do. There's no one correct way of doing it. It's whatever you're comfortable with and are able to accomplish. Budget forms. The budget forms everything's on our website for download. The budget forms are in Excel format. We've simplified them as much as we can. If you applied years ago, we asked for last year's budget, this year's budget, next year's budget. Now, all we want to know is what you're proposing for next year. That's it. All right? You fill out the orange, and the blue automatically fills in for you. We have formulas in there for you. So it should be super simple. The categories that are on the side are kind of set by the block grant organizations at the state, the Historical Commission and the State Council on the Arts. So we can't fluctuate those very much, but we've tried to simplify as much as possible. We're going to do a little quiz. Where does it go? All right, $200 to Sir Speedy for printing flyers and brochures. Where would that go, do you think, in the categories? It would go under Well, supplies or marketing, supplies and materials, or you could put it under marketing, because a flyer or brochure would be marketing. And this is not an exact science. You know, if you're not sure, give me a call. If you put it in and the panel has a question about it, I can always follow up with you afterwards, but it's not an exact science. $100 for rubber stamps and distressed paper. Supplies and materials, definitely. A muralist is charging $800 for an installation on your building. It would be outside services, artistic. So if the artist were being employed by you, then it would fall under artistic salaries. But if it's an artist that you're contracting with to come in, then it's under outside fees and services. $400 for speakers and an outdoor mic system. That would go under rentals. Porta-johns, anything like that would fall under rentals. All right, if you're renting a space, there's a separate category for space rental. You can put it in there. All right, so that's expenses. The other side, we have income. Again, just one column here, projecting out what you think you're going to make next year. And we understand their projections. They're going to fluctuate. That's why we do a final report at the end, so that you can put the actual figures in after the program is all done. $400 from Dodge Foundation. Where would you put that? Foundations. That's right. $1,200 income from ad sales and a program book. This is a tough one. I would put it under merchandise concession ad sales. So it's listed as ad sales. All right. $500 donation from a local law firm. Corporations and businesses, that's right. And we are not using in-kind services. We don't ask for in-kinds. They're not eligible as your match. You have to show actual donations. $150 from a bake sale done a month prior to the event. That's a little tough, but since you figure individuals are buying the cakes, I would put it under individual and other private sources. That's kind of a catch-all category. All right, and again, these are just estimates. You're just trying to do the best you can. And then we have a third budget form which talks about fundraising. And what we want to see here is we don't want to be your sole source of funding. All right, we want to see diversification of funding sources. So if you go to Home Depot and ask them for a donation, you're going to put under corporations and businesses, Home Depot, and then the amount they gave. Or if they did not give anything, put 0. What it shows the panel is that you went out and asked Home Depot. Even if they didn't give you anything, that shows us that you're trying to diversify your funding. All right, so that's a pretty simple one. Any questions on the budget forms? And again, yes?
I just have a question. How is the money distributed once you've been awarded that? How does that work?
So when you get your award letter in January, sometimes December, depending on how the freeholder meeting goes, you will have a contract and an initial payment voucher of 75% of your award. All right, you get that back to us and we will pay you the following month. All right, then at the end, when you submit your final report, we will provide you with a voucher for the final 25%. All right, so it's 75-25.
What happens if something happens and the event's not held?
That's why you have insurance.
We've never had that happen, but if for some reason you can't hold the event that you requested the funding for, it's a nightmare to process the money back. So what we would ask you to do is come up with some type of programming to utilize the money in a way that meets the criteria for the grant. And we don't want the money back. So we want you to figure out how you can create a program that works for that funding. The other option, the reason we hold back that 25% at the end is if for some reason you're just non-communicative and the program was not really satisfactory, or you broke the contract in some way, then we can withhold that 25%. But we've never really done that either. We have a very good track record of having a relationship with our re-grantees, so we communicate throughout the year, and it's rarely ever a problem. I think maybe in our whole history we had one organization actually fold, and we had to reallocate those funds to another organization. And then this, you can just see $400 to Dodge would go under foundations, $1,200 from ad sales would go under corporations and businesses, $500 donation would go under corporations and businesses, $150 from a bake sale would go under individual giving, that sort of thing. Now we get to the crux of the issue. This is what the criteria is what the Grants Review Panel will use in making determinations on your awards and your scoring. These are the 5 categories we use to make determinations and decisions. The quality of the experience, audience engagement, attendance, governance, and budget. Okay? And this is Game of Thrones, if you're wondering.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so quality of the experience. Does the project, program, or institution have a system or plan to ensure the highest quality to the work being conducted? Is the organization listening to numerous interests and points of perspective? Is the work or organization engaging and thought-provoking? How innovative is the concept? Okay. So we just have some examples here of what we're looking for here is quality of the experience. Audiences today, and this is getting to some of the issues related to history organizations, audiences today want experiential, immersive programming. Now when you think about it, historic sites are perfect for this. They are naturally immersive. You walk into a historic building, a historic site, and you are immersed in that period of time. So it should not be as difficult as it has been for the last decade for historic sites to create an experience that younger audiences want. However, it has been, and we're going to get into why that is. But here are some examples of different ways that you can kind of interpret. You don't have to be so static. This is Bucks County Historical Society in Pennsylvania. They're celebrating the 60s, Chester County. They're celebrating the 60s, even though you wouldn't think of that necessarily as part of maybe what is traditionally Chester County. Chester County was around in the 60s. A lot of things happened in Chester County in the 60s, and they did the research to find out what it was, and they're celebrating it. This one is the Brooklyn Historical Society. They have programming going on all the time on a whole bunch of different subjects, right? So you don't have to limit yourself. You can do any number. You think of it, try it. We want to see new programming. If it doesn't work, that's okay. All right? As long as you try it and you understand why it didn't, and you can revise it the next year, the next time you have it, and you can work on really making something that is relevant and attractive to audiences. That's what we're really talking about here. Building relevancy to the audiences you're trying to attract. I'm going to give you a great example of some new programming from Gloucester County. Acknowledgement. There it is.
On June 5th and 6th, 2015, groups from Evergreen Avenue Elementary School and Kingsway Regional Middle School, along with members of the community from Gloucester County, came to the James and Ann Whitehall House at Red Bank Battlefield to experience something new. Shortly after arriving, audience members encountered the people who lived and worked around the Whitehall Plantation and Fort Mercer in October 1777.
They met Prince Bent, an enslaved man fighting for his freedom in the Continental Army,
Jonas Cattell, a blacksmith's apprentice,
and Jenny Murphy, an indentured servant working for the Whitehall family. The guides led the audience in small groups around the grounds of the site.
Blacks living at Taft Fort heard that some men loyal to the British Crown planned to capture General Washington. And the man telling the story called those men Tories. And I get called up sometimes when I go to the market with Grandma, but I'm not sure what it means. The blacksmith didn't want to capture Taft, so he got a message sent to one of General Washington's men.
Along the way, the actors improvised with their groups in character and even gave them tasks to complete during the experience.
I know it's better than the phone is not very brave. Sleep on the house in the middle of the night. When do you sleep? Oh, I should first figure out where to get things down there and then maybe to his house. He lives very far away, 10 miles up the road. Well, 10 miles, he's coming to see her. To see him. Meet him halfway. That's not a bad idea. 5 miles up the road in the middle of the night. Yeah, how will I see him? Oh no, the North Star. Star in the sky. A bright star.
All the groups converged on the Whitehall Herb Garden to experience what happened on the morning of October 22nd, 1777, the morning of the Battle of Red Bank. Nearly 200 students, educators, and community members experienced this theater performance over those 2 days in June. And here's what some of them had to say. Audience members truly engaged with the history of the Whitehall House and Red Bank Battlefield in an innovative way and learned something new in the process.
There's acknowledgement again. So, in that situation, it was, number one, it was different, right? Number two, the kids became connected to certain actors and certain of people that were involved in the story. Then they experienced the interaction of the actual story, so they became engaged with it. They were committed to it. It was not, here you sit here and listen to this lecture. They became part of the story. And if you think about stories, that's what we're doing with historic sites. We're telling stories, or we hope to be telling stories, and everybody loves stories. I mean, Look at Game of Thrones. That's just a story about different people that you become engaged with and attached to, and you want to see what happens. And so that's what we're trying to accomplish here. The other thing I'm going to show you is, and some organizations, including the Historical Society, yes, Flavia.
I was wondering what a program like that cost.
That was, well, the actors were from New York, and the play, the actual screenplay, was done by someone in New York, and then they came down to Whitehall. So I think it ran $10,000, $11,000 for the entire program. The thing is that it's attracted so much attention since then that you have organizations within the county that are seeking to do it or to fund it so that it can happen more and consistently every year.
Were they completely funded by the Gloucester County Commission, or?
Well, no, it would have been 50%. They would have been funded 50%. They must have found funding from other sources for the remainder. Yep. You can also do innovative advertising and marketing. You have beautiful historic sites. After I showed this, I think last year, the County Historical Society did something very similar to this. And it's just a way of, it's very simple. It just puts the site in context to its surroundings. A drone rental for the day, attached it to some music, and you're good to go. All right, audience engagement. Audiences seek experiences that are active, immersive, and even social. How well does the organization understand and know its audience? Is the activity participatory or have a participatory component? Is there a learning component? Is the experience more than a singular event and include ways of continuing interaction and impact? All right, so these are just some examples of different ways that you can create some interactivity, some engagement. What we are talking about here, and this is really the crux of what we're getting into as far as historic sites. Visitors, the visitor experience is the critical component to your programming. So it is not ensuring that every single piece of in your collection is kept pristine and untouched for the next 200 years. It's not that the rope bed in the bedroom is preserved and is pristine and perfect. What you're working on is trying to create a visitor experience. So you should have material that can be interacted with, that kids can touch, that people can use, that they can sit in and lie in and learn about the life that went on at your historic site. All right? I'm going to give you an example that's very tech heavy. This is not something that we can anybody in Cumberland can probably accomplish right now, but it's something to work towards.
right into students' hands,
Awesome!
making it more engaging and more fun.
I agree. Yes.
Play the Past is a groundbreaking new way for 4th, 5th, and 6th graders to use handheld technology to deepen their learning.
They used to fur and trade with the Europeans.
Students are given an iPod Touch to explore the Then Now Wow exhibit at the Minnesota History Center.
Are you guys trading? Yeah.
Students use the iPod to uncover stories, pursue quests, solve problems, and make choices to personalize their learning.
You need 2 stars for each one.
Students also collect digital items throughout the exhibit.
Dude, you know we can actually trade items?
These items go into a digital backpack that's sent back to the classroom. Teachers and students can then download the items for further research or new projects to build on what they've learned and extend the museum experience.
Okay, what do we do?
Play the Past also addresses state academic standards in multiple disciplines and brings the Northern Lights curriculum to life. Ask about Play the Past when booking your next field trip to the Minnesota History Center.
So now I think we just go to mind check.
So your 21st century students can play and learn in a 21st century way.
All right, so what is working is interactivity, immersiveness, engaging programming. So think how that can be accomplished at your site. Museums embrace iconic selfie moments to drive younger visitors. If you do not permit photography in your building, you need to change that policy. You can restrict it to non-flash photography, that's fine, but you should be encouraging photography inside, outside, and absolutely everywhere within your historic site. This is how you get marketing to the audiences that we need to attract. If you go to the Philadelphia Museum of Art now, you can photograph every inch of that building, every work of art, every exhibit, everything. All right, you just can't use flash. That's the only thing. They did that because that is a great way to market. You take a shot of Marcel Duchamp's fountain, and you send that to your friend on Instagram, and you say, "Can you believe this? Look at this thing. This is art." And it starts a conversation. They're like, "Where did you see that?" Museum of Art. There's all sorts of stuff there, and here's a bunch of other pictures, and this is us making silly faces in front of a Chagall, and you know, it's whatever it is, it's interactive, and it creates a buzz that attracts people to your organization. So that's an easy policy change you can make. This is what you want to have at your organization. People, friends taking pictures of friends at your site. All right, we're going to talk about social media usage.
Know your own phone.
Media helps communicate with potential visitors off-site. But what role do social media channels play on-site? A pretty big one, it turns out. You're watching Know Your Own Bone, Fast Facts for Cultural Executives. I'm Colleen Dillenschneider. Let's consult impacts in the Trustee National Awareness, Attitudes, and Usage Study to see what information sources visitors to cultural organizations use while they are on-site. 52% of visitors to cultural organizations, such as museums or performing arts entities, for instance, report using social media channels on site during their visit. This means that over half of visitors are checking out an organization's social media channels or sharing something from their own experience while they're on site. Over half. Not only that, on-site social media use tends to increase visitor satisfaction. Check out this data that contemplates the average satisfaction levels of people who report using each of these channels on-site, alongside the satisfaction levels of those who did not use that channel. Take a look at how things stack up for mobile apps, not much of an impact here. Peer review sites like Yelp and TripAdvisor. direct mail and brochures, word of mouth or interpersonal interactions, mobile web, and social media. Interpersonal interactions increase on-site satisfaction the most, and that's no surprise, as there's significant data to underscore the importance of face-to-face interactions. But those who use social media on-site also have greater visitor satisfaction rates than those who do not. And so do folks who use mobile web on-site. So does using social media on-site increase visitor satisfaction, or do folks who are more satisfied with their experiences feel more inclined to use social media? Well, it's likely both. And in either case, there's a positive relationship. On-site social media usage is a prevalent thing, and it's generally a very good thing. Satisfaction rates are a key metric that drive intent to revisit, value for cost perceptions, and positive word-of-mouth endorsements. Social media not only helps motivate visitation off-site, but it plays an important role in on-site satisfaction. And that's an update that's worth sharing. And now you're in the know. Thanks so much for watching. For more information, go ahead and check out Know Your Own Phone.
That's actually a site I would recommend checking out. They have a lot of data-driven information for cultural executives that's really useful. A great example of this is the rededication of East Point Lighthouse this weekend. So there were folks taking photographs all over the place that day. And I have seen images from that event on my Facebook page for 4 days now. It's all over the place. And that is the best marketing tool you could have. It was probably in the paper, I don't even know, I didn't even look. All I know is that if I had not been to that event, I would see all these images and be like, wow, I've got to get over there and see that lighthouse. That is a cool site. All right? Attendance and quantitative impact. How many individuals will be touched by this programming in some way? Are there plans to reach as many people as possible? Is the marketing inclusive? Are there efforts to reach a diverse audience? So you are encouraged. This goes back to the accessibility issue. This goes back to your publicity plan, your assessment of finding gaps in your audiences, who's not coming to you. It's just as importantly as who is coming, who is not coming to your programming, and why do you think that is? Does your programming need to revise? Do you need to add to your programming to attract that audience? Is there something in your policies that is a deterrent for people to attend in some way? So start thinking about that. I just point out the Molly Brown House Museum. So one of the things they did is apparently, and I don't know who Molly Brown was, but she apparently liked hats. And so they had a hat making workshop at the Molly Brown House, which was apparently very successful. And you can see on their website, look, you can connect to them in 5 different social media ways. Yeah. Governance. Does the organization have a track record of good programming administration? Is the governance, both staff and board, diverse and inclusive? Is the governance representative of the community being served? Are high standards of professional conduct in place? Does the program or institution conduct critical assessment to determine success and impact? All right, when you think about an organization, you want to think about diversity. This is the pictures from Futurama. That's a very diverse audience. When you think about board membership, you want to think about marginalized or socially underserved groups. These are just some examples of classifications to think about. The pie chart is demographics of Cumberland County. We are one of only 4 counties in the state that are minority majority, meaning that no single ethnic group holds more than a 50% share of the population. The other 3 are north of Newark, so we are the only one south of Newark that is so diverse that we have a minority majority population. I give this presentation in Gloucester. When you go up to Gloucester, that blue Caucasian piece of the pie is much larger. When you go to Burlington, I give the presentation in Burlington, it's even bigger. What I tell Gloucester and Burlington is that they need to start thinking about themselves as Cumberland, because we are actually ahead of the trend. The trend nationally is to increase diversity. That's where populations are going. That's where communities are headed. So we are ahead of the game here versus places like Gloucester and Burlington. The other thing I'll point out is the small text is a quote from an analysis. Some organizations consider diversification as programming something by an Asian playwright or Latino composer and wondering why new audiences don't rush through the door. True diversification is a scary prospect, one that requires fundamental changes to all aspects of the organization. If we are truly diversified, we can't have all middle-aged white people sitting on our boards. We can't continue to maintain practices ranging from where we perform to how we sell our tickets that are currently comfortable primarily for wealthy people. So you need to think about how to attract different audiences, and mostly that comes down to policy. All right, and then finally we have budget. Does the organization seem to have a realistic grasp of the programming cost? Is the organization working to diversify funding sources across government, foundation, business, and audience member giving? Is efficiency a consideration in programming goals? This is a chart showing all the different ways that you can collect revenue. There are a lot of different ways you can attract revenue. Fundamental question, are you planning for the economic stability of your organization in the long term? I would hope that that's a yes from everybody. If that's a yes, then you need to look at diversifying audiences, because that is where the trend nationally is going, and you need to attract everybody to your organization. You are competing against every other activity somebody could do if they leave the house. And so if you're going to be the least interesting thing that weekend, then you're not going to get a big audience. All right, what if we don't change at all and something magical just happens? All right, please, if your board is talking that way, then you've got to really work on governance and board development. All right? All right, now we get to the issue related to history organizations. House or home, rethinking the house museum paradigm. I would recommend looking for Ron Potvin. He is from Brown University, and he is one of the specialists that is looking at this issue. And fundamentally what he says is the traditional historical society house museum model no longer is relevant to the communities that we exist in today. And so consequently, we need to change our perspective to visitor experience. That is the critical, most important policy goal of your organization. I'm going to read this because this is important, and it's going to cause a little bit of a challenge for some folks. Professional standards for collections, care, and preservation have contributed to emotionless interpretation and limited visitor engagement. The typical house museum tour focuses on the senses of sight and listening and ignores the powerful human connections achieved through the remaining senses. This is most evident in the treatment of objects. The standard rule for visitors is don't touch anything. This is taking the easy way out. It does not require decision-making by museum professionals and preservationists, only obedience to a single uniform approach. In fact, some objects are more durable than others. Some are more replaceable than others. Further, at the risk of bringing angry torchbearers to my heretical doors, some objects are more important than others, and there is such a thing as an acceptable risk. Instead of don't touch anything, the revised standard that historic house museums should adopt is don't touch everything. Museums should invite visitors to touch, hold, sit upon, and even smell certain objects. Abandon the term historic house museum, and with it the physical and metaphorical velvet ropes it has come to imply. The word house objectifies the museum setting, treating the building as something that is as much a part of a collection as the things contained within it, rather than as a place of warmth where real people lived and breathed, ate and slept, drank too much, had sex, and raised children, fought with each other, and maintained strong and controversial belief systems. In short, all of the things that happen in a home today. This is where house museums need to go if they want to attract audiences and remain viable and relevant to the communities. You need to tell the stories of what happened in that building. What were these people about? They were not some portrait on a wall. That is a very limited story. What was this guy, or who was this woman deep down? Did they fight? Did they have affairs? What were their kids like? All right? Start telling the stories. And after researching this, if I see this, or this, or this, or this, I'm going to physically take those ropes and velvet and throw them out the front door. All right? We cannot have velvet ropes in our historic house museums anymore. If you think about who has been to Falling Water, Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water in Pennsylvania. All right. Did you see a single velvet rope in that whole building? There's not one. When you go into that building full of truly priceless antiques and articles and ephemera, they have Diego Rivera's hanging on the wall, for God's sakes. You don't see a single rope. You walk through that house as if you are a guest of that house, like they are still there. And you connect with that site. They do not have UV shades on the windows. They didn't have UV shades when the family lived there, so they don't have them on there now. In your packets, there is an article. It's a little dry, but it talks about the Anarchist Guide to Historic House Museums. The author is Franklin Wagnon. I would recommend buying that book and reading it. I love this quote: "The traditional historic house tour is like being invited to your friend's house for dinner and being made to stand in the hall while they tell you about dinner for 20 minutes, when what you really want is to just eat dinner," right? Organizations that are not being responsive are dying. Colonial Williamsburg, having deficits, letting go of staff. Historical societies fight to stay relevant and attract interest. All right, this is a problem. We want to be vibrant. We want all of our organizations to be successful. It is not that you're telling a story that no one's interested in. Stories are fascinating to people, but you've got to tell them in the right way.
The exact opposite direction of what we're talking about.
And they're suffering for it.
Right. When I was a kid, there were demonstrations. You wouldn't ask the questions. Now it's just straight through.
Right. Exactly. I don't know if you've seen this commercial for Ancestry.
We hope these truths to be self-evident.
That all men
are created equal. That they are endowed by the Creator
with certain unalienable rights.
That among these are life,
liberty,
and the pursuit of happiness.
We, therefore,
the representatives of the United States of America,
for the support of this declaration,
mutually pledge to each other
Our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
So what's that? That is just showing that everything leads to diversity. In that commercial, almost everyone was represented in some fashion, and they were all direct descendants of the original signers of the Declaration.
First of all, it's 3:15, started at 2:30, time 4. Note that. So what we're doing is we're doing an interdisciplinary workshop at both our groups in the city. So we allowed our group of Summer Institute students and professors to come through with our anarchist tags and just experience this house and give us their kind of ground source comments about how they would interpret this house and how they would make the visitor experience better. We're decentralizing the experience. The typical experience at a house museum is that you get a tour guide, you stand in the hallway, and there's ropes up, because you can see right here, we have chains that actually make it so you can't come in here. So what we're doing is we're starting to see what ways we censor our visitors in their experience with simple things like chains, text boxes, placement of furniture. So after today, we'll be compiling all this information, and then we'll be having a discussion, I think, in a week or so, about ways that we can start to incorporate new innovative ideas. So this is interesting. It's not something I tell participants at workshops, but it's a really significant part. So we came here at 2:30. It is now 3:25. Part of these workshops is to see when you get bored, that's number one. And number two, which rooms you congregate to and start acting like a normal person. And so what's happened is we've got 2 rooms that we totally rearranged the furniture because they weren't habitable the way they were before. They were stage sets. And now if you can just scan these 2 rooms, what you'll see is at 3:25, all of a sudden, this group feels ownership of this site. And someone on Facebook Live said, you know, world experts on this time period, it's a shame they're not involved. Well, guess what? They're not involved on purpose, right? Because I believe that these sites should tell a story without someone telling the story for them. So when we first started, everybody was really tempted. They want to touch anything, it took a while, it takes the buildings down, I had to take the chains down, and then we had to force some of the shoes. A few of you went up to the attic, we went up to the attic. And so that attic is not interpreted. You're looking out there, looking out there, so on, looking out there, wonder if you carry all this furniture and those steps, around over there, sitting over there, gasoline hot up there, which probably would have been, Well, Salem is now, since December, moving on a new project to locate every slave dwelling in Salem, and you are sitting right now in a house where there is a slave dwelling, which is upstairs in the attic. Now let's talk a little bit about objects, because that's what you guys are here about. You each have different objects. It is interesting because the main changes we made were contextual, right? Objects became stories based on the sequence of kind of relationships. On that table over there, we wrote a story about somebody doing needlework, sitting with somebody reading, sitting across from somebody else, I forget what they were doing. How do you see this idea affecting research that you do?
When I did the whole cookie roller, that both are actually part of the and I'm right there with it.
I say it's putting actual people and actual stories and actual lives.
But the truth is, if you have a site that's not interesting, we won't even be able to have our brains open to the point that we're going to listen to the people.
Okay, and then this is the
Data suggests that a sizable amount of people people report interest in visiting cultural organizations, and yet over 30% of those same people don't actually attend. What's going on? You're watching Know Your Own Vote, Fast Facts for Cultural Executives. I'm Colleen Dillon-Schneider. At Impacts, we identified folks from the National Awareness, Attitudes, and Usage Study who report an interest in visiting cultural organizations, but who haven't within the past 2 years. Despite interest, here's why they haven't visited. The top reason is because they prefer an alternative activity, such as seeing a movie or sporting event, going jogging, bowling, or even enjoying trivia at the bar with friends. Simply put, for a good number of people interested in visiting cultural organizations, there are many other things that compete for their precious time. And it seems some of those other things may take precedent. This finding is important because it underscores that there is intense competition for the engagement of people who are willing to leave their homes to do anything at all. These are the same folks being targeted by the film industry, rock concerts, and sports teams. This makes it all the more important for cultural organizations to communicate their brand values and to market their unique experiences and missions. Further underscoring this call to action is the fact that, well, folks increasingly want to stay home. The number of people who've expressed a preference to stay home during a week off of school or work has increased by 17.3% in the last 5 years. The amount of people who express a preference to stay home over the weekend has increased by 19.4%. These are huge numbers, but remember, not all is lost. These folks are still on the web, talking to friends and connected to the outside world. There's still an opportunity to engage them if we can compellingly articulate the benefits of our experiences. This is where targeted, personalized communications enabled by technology are key. In addition to movies, sporting events, and a day at the beach, our competition is increasingly the couch and a remote control. The best thing about competition, though, it raises all of our levels of play. Competition brings out the best in us so long as we work to separate ourselves from the threat. And we can do this by reminding would-be visitors that there's no at-home substitute for the wonder, awe, and social connectivity uniquely experienced at a cultural organization. And now you're in the know. Thanks so much for watching. For more information, click on the link and check out Know Your Own Vote.
Okay, so do we understand what a suggestion is to attract audiences? Interactive, engaging, immersive, personalized, right? That's the takeaway from tonight. So if you are not following the Cultural and Heritage Commission on our social media, please do. We do have, if you have board members who this would be useful to experience, we are video recording the entire evening. As soon as we're done editing it, it will be on our YouTube channel, our dedicated YouTube channel. All of our previous workshops are on the YouTube channel, so if you want to check out what we talked about last year, you can do that. Are there any questions? Does everybody have like an awesome idea for 2018? Yes, Julie.
Would you consider like a collaborative effort between groups?
That would be awesome. We love collaborations. So that is something that by necessity a lot of organizations in Cumberland County need to do. And it puts us ahead of the curve, I believe, as well, because collaborations are easy to cross-promote. One of the things I did not show, we just completed an analysis of cultural audience participation rates in Cumberland County in 2016. We only had 8% of them staying overnight. And so that is a huge area of potential growth for us. So one of the things we're doing at the county is we're trying to create weekend packages for folks. That means multiple events by different organizations that we package into a deal, like a collective agenda for the weekend. And that will encourage outside, particularly out-of-county audience members to spend the night here in Cumberland County, which is, when you look at the figures of money spent, people who spend the night in Cumberland County spend a lot more than people who don't. So we want those dollars. We need them to spend the night. So that's what we're working on. So if you have collaborative programming, that is fantastic. I'm sure the panel is going to look very positively to that. Any other questions? Any great, awesome ideas for programs in 2018? You don't want to share. I understand. I understand. Yes, Jamie.
I'll share one because, and I don't know how quickly it can happen. I don't know if it'll be 2018, but there's a lot of folks who won't go on the boat because they have like a fear of the water or whatever. And I'm not sure if it's true or if it's a stereotype, but a lot of those folks seem to be either are people of color.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're going to do, what we're going to try to do is put a replica of the boat on campus so that they can like raise sails and drop a trawl and raise it up and like interact with
Okay.
I'm not sure if this would be a grant thing, but this is like a way to introduce people to that part of the oyster industry.
Right.
Without
physically getting on the boat.
Yeah.
Right.
It might be water, it might be the rocking. We're not sure what the issue is.
Right,
but,
right.
You know, our audience is pretty.
Right, and that would potentially attract an audience that is currently underserved by your organization. Perfect. All right. All right, well with that, please take some food home with you, hang around, chit chat, collaborate, and thank you for coming tonight.